Um, last session, um, you've did a little more digging around of this temple where you'd had this previous confrontation. Not finding anything of note in terms of sort of loot or items or anything, but able to decipher some various sort of murals and carvings around this sort of temple itself. Working out this was a quite aged temple to the old gods. And in particular, you were able to identify some of the murals were referring to Corin, this betrayer of the new gods you've sort of heard about previously. Was a solar, from what you understand, and essentially a follower of the new gods, who came with them when they first came to Thentos, but for some unknown reason sided with the old gods. Was eventually punished for that decision by Tyr, the leader of the new gods. Following that, you via Errand, your new friend, were able to teleport directly into Griffinsteel. You decided to heading back to Griffinsteel was your next step, but you had to kind of work out what the best route there was, particularly as you were currently kind of cut off in the Blacklands. But Errand revealed that she knew of a sort of secret cell operated by the Order of the Magi inside of Griffinsteel, and teleported you via that into Griffinsteel under the condition that you were all blindfolded to as not reveal the identity, location, or any of the information, I suppose, or finer details of this cell. Upon finding yourselves back in Griffinsteel, or in Griffinsteel for the first time for some of you, you initially made contact with Shadowfront, the Assassin's Guild in of Griffinsteel, and Willow Quickstep, who you kind of brought up to speed on some of the things that have been going on since you last left the city. You kind of mentioned that you had a desire to essentially come face to face, or to have some kind of meeting or contact with the Emperor. Something which Willow was quite eager to aid you with, on the sort of agreement that there would be some kind of violence involved there, but you decided that wasn't necessarily the approach you wanted to take for this. Instead, you decided to head to the Record and to speak with Levi Atwood, former employer of some elements of your party, or what little remains of that actually at this point, I suppose. Elwyn was quite honest in that conversation. Admitted that you, as kind of reported, and as Levi understood it, as a group, you were responsible for killing Orinda Featherstone. But Elwyn was also entirely open and forthcoming with the information that she was a vampire, and that you actually killed her twice, amongst some other rather outlandish but true claims. Levi was kind of unsure on how to take this dump of quite strange and somewhat shocking information. But you had a couple, I think there were 2 attempts at persuasion checks actually from Elwyn and Errand in this, which both went swimmingly, and there's probably no further implications, and he seems entirely bought into your suggestions. There was, you as a group asked if, essentially, if Levi could get you an audience with the Emperor, something which he certainly did not argue against. And as we left last session, told you, essentially sort of got up from his desk and grabbed his own jacket and told you that, you would go there and meet the Emperor now. Because You are a group of friendly people he knows and definitely trusts. Presumably I sowed enough sarcasm into all of that.
I'm not sure I appreciated the tone there. That was... You made that sound like we'd almost done something wrong. I mean...
No, I mean...
If we're backtracking on that, there's something else. You talked about previous employer, past employer. As far as Carl's concerned, he's still getting the 10 GP a day. A week, I think it was, actually.
He's still getting paid.
Yeah, he hasn't received a notification of termination.
That is entirely fair and potentially reasonable. Yeah. I mean, yeah. In fairness, I guess Elwyn at this point is the only former employee in this group. Yeah.
Hey, Elwyn's probably owed about 50 gold from this guy.
Yeah. Now might not be the best time for that conversation. But,
nah, I think.
Once he sells us out to the Emperor, it's going to be even harder.
There's certainly room to discuss that. Yeah, so we pick up the group. You did. It is worth noting you did as a group roll some insight checks, and collectively, even at the lower end of your insight checks, collectively you are all at least aware that there seems to be some amount of trepidation or uncertainty in Levi himself. None of you are under the illusion that this conversation so far has gone particularly to plan. As I pointed out, you've been entirely honest. It's a rather outlandish truth to deliver. So Levi gets up from his desk, puts on a jacket, and tells you it's early morning, but he can lead you across town now, and it shouldn't be too difficult to get an audience with the Emperor as soon as he is available himself. He sort of walks across the room out of the office into the sort of lobby area of the Record, and you see he looks over at this the same employee which sort of ushered you in this morning. He just turns to her and he says, cancel my diary for this morning. Something rather urgent has come up. And he just nods at her, and then heads for the exit. You all happy to follow, or?
Yes.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I guess so.
Am I being in sight?
Are you what, sorry?
Yeah, I'll put a hood up of my cloak.
Yeah, that's cool.
I've got something, I think. A cloak thing.
Yeah, you've got the nature's mantle.
Mantle.
Yeah. Cool. So he leads you out onto the city streets. It's quite busy at this point. It's past 9 AM, so the businesses are all sort of open for business. It's pretty busy at this time. And he kind of he does begin making some sort of small talk. Again, based off your previous insight rolls, there is certainly a sort of sense of sort of uncomfort as he sort of talks, and he sort of turns and he speaks to you initially, Elwyn, and he says, I suppose you won't be staying in the city for long?
No idea currently.
And this group, where did you meet this group?
Where did I meet them all?
He sort of he turns to sort of start. He just sort of looks around the group himself and says, presumably you are all allied in this desire to meet the Emperor. You have shared business.
Do you think some of us shouldn't?
I just suppose I'm curious. It will be rather difficult, I suppose, to just turn up without being able myself to explain who this group is and what their desire is with the Emperor. You must understand that stories of vampires and wars against the gods will only get you so far.
You've heard of the Uniter, haven't you?
Yes.
And what's the view of the Uniter here?
For what it's worth, as a reminder, you did discuss the Uniter with Levi last session. He told you that the Uniter had actually approached or sent communications to the record, claiming that the Uniter had the Staff of Willing, and it's essentially asking the record to publish an article seeking anyone that wanted to join this.
So you know the Uniter has claims against Austral, and we're here to tell the Emperor more about why the Uniter is a bad thing.
Somebody jog my memory, because I didn't actually take this in my notes. Did you guys tell Levi who the Uniter was?
Yes.
I thought so,
Yeah,
but
we did.
I thought we had discussed that, but I didn't have it in my notes. So yeah, that's fine. And so he turns. He does look at Elwyn. He sort of says, "I suppose there is a obvious connection between your group and this Uniter." Yes. And he looks at you, Elwyn. He says, "And you believe Xavier, the Uniter can be stopped?"
He doesn't really answer. He just kind of does the shoulder shrug.
You see, he look. Sorry, go on.
Lathander thinks so, isn't that right, Dawnbreaker?
Yes. Yeah, there absolutely is able to be stopped.
You speak on behalf of the gods.
I speak. I wouldn't be so bold as to say on behalf of, and certainly not of all the gods, but I speak on a mission from one of the gods.
Interesting, this new company of yours, Elwyn. From what I recall, your former friends were not so keen on deities.
I still are not, to be honest.
Interesting. As you're sort of walking down some of the streets, Nyx, you spot just standing in a sort of doorway as you're passing down the street. There is a human you recognise as a member of Shadowfront, of Willow's group of the Assassin's Guild, who looks at you, clearly sort of attempts to make eye contact with you, and just sort of does a little bit of a nod at you, almost sort of gesturing, trying to get a read on if you are, sort of trying to, almost, you can sense it, basically trying to ask you if all is okay.
Yeah, everything's fine.
You just want to just send like a nod back or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay. Yeah, you continue round. He turns a corner. You start heading down, and you can see up ahead of you. There's actually there's a sort of small square in this area of the city. Just on the edge of the square, there is a, you can see what is a active sort of on duty city watch, like city guard post. You can see there is an active guard presence. Like there's a few guards. There's 2 guards in armor outside of this post, this sort of watch house. You can see one of them's talking to what looks to be a merchant. Looks like they're having a somewhat sort of heated conversational debate of some type. Levi sort of heads you down the street in that direction. And as you sort of pass, you get a bit of a clearer sort of. You can sort of overhear the conversation between this guard and this merchant. The merchant is complaining about a theft from their market stall this morning, which the guard does not seem particularly interested in. You kind of get the feeling in general this guard is kind of annoyed, just ignoring them. But Levi, you just sort of carry on following down. And eventually, you carry on heading through, and you start to head towards the area around the palace, towards the sort of center of the city. Levi slows his pace slightly. And yeah, his pace sort of slows down. Then he stops entirely. And he just stops walking. As he says nothing. He just sort of goes silent for a moment.
Look around.
Sure.
Just feels. Is he setting us up for a?
You can all make a perception check if you want.
Pepper's not being here will not roll.
Where is Pepper?
Pepper stayed in the Assassin's Guild.
Oh yes, you did say that at the time. Actually, yeah, you did.
My helmet got in the way.
Mate, Jesus, you are letting the side down, Arthur. The only one below a 20. Shocking.
I'm not good at looking. I'm good at hitting.
Indeed. Nice. You guys are on fire. Yeah, you sort of as Levi sort of begins to come to a stop, you all sort of take in the surroundings quickly. You see there's certainly no obvious signs of sort of ambush or anything like that. You can see there is a sort of slightly increased presence of like watch guards, etc. in this area. It kind of makes sense in the area you're in. You're only a couple of minutes walk from the sort of palace currently. There's nothing that looks particularly suspicious. You do, as you are sort of looking around trying to get a feel, you do kind of just from what you perceive of Levi himself, there is clearly quite a heavy sense of trepidation as he sort of comes to this sort of stop and stands silently. And then he stops this. It's at this point he actually turns. He sort of turns around and then he looks at you again, Elwyn, and he just says, Every single part of my head tells me right now that I should turn you in, Elwyn.
Erend will step back away from him slightly and put a hand on a short sword.
I will stay still.
Okay. And he sort of he looks around at the group, at the sort of party. And he turns back to you, Aaron. He says, I truly do not understand what your intentions are, turning up with this group of strangers and your claims, but if we were to have this conversation, I wanted to do it in the open, where, if you'll excuse me for being so open myself, provides me some kind of security, considering what you have admitted to having done.
I've never lied to you.
And he sort of stands for a moment, and then he sort of continues. And he says to you, I'm a man that has worked in news and publications, communication for my entire adult life. I understand that a person's truth is sometimes pliable. Perhaps we can bend the truth to our own means and purposes, and even to the point we can convince ourselves sometimes we're doing the right thing. What is your true intention? Why are you here? Why have you returned to the city?
Stop the Uniter.
Errand will look over at Elwyn and in Elvish, Elvish, will say, "Venerable Father, should we not tell him that we're here to get the ring and to take it away before the Uniter comes for it?"
You're really banking on the fact that Levi doesn't speak Elvish.
What's the chances?
In Elvish, I will say back, I believe he will understand and stop United coming in to destroy Griffin's Steel just for that ring. He will understand.
So should we not tell him? Him nodding at the guy's name. Completely gone.
Levi. I thought I already told him that. Maybe that bit just slipped my mind when I was talking.
We haven't
Yeah.
mentioned the ring.
I realise that now. I thought we said that was what United was after. The Ring of Power.
I don't think we've said that to him.
No, we haven't.
We just said we wanted to see.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, will then go to Levi. The reason why we want to speak to the king is because he has a ring that United is after, and he will destroy the city to get to it, like he did across the sea.
Owen. Third time is the charm, I suppose. Okay,
Well, this can only go well.
You know I've got minus on this roll.
Nah, not bad.
And you can see there is, like I say, there is this general sense of uncertainty about Levi throughout this whole sort of journey. And as the two of you were sort of stood speaking to one another in Elvish, you can see there is a sort of, maybe not concern, but there is certainly a sort of sense of, almost looks like fear, intimidation. He certainly doesn't seem very comfortable. And as you give out this piece of information, he sort of looks at you. He sort of meets your gaze quite sort of clearly, Elwyn, and he says to you, "I feel so uncertain of what the right thing to do is right now. I cannot."
I feel like, well, as long as our job is here is to warn the Emperor that an evil entity may turn up to destroy the city, that it is best to give a warning.
I have many disagreements in my time working for Orinda. Our beliefs were not always wholly aligned, but her murder, and say what you will, that is what you did. Her murder is something that does not sit easy with me. I would, and you can see he almost sort of argues with himself as he sort of stops. I will. Sorry, go on.
Does your love for this person that Elwyn killed, does it blind you to the danger to the city? The two things are not related.
I never killed her. I never laid a finger on Fiona. Both times she passed away, I held her hand as she died.
My love for my city and for the people of the city is the reason I have stayed in my job for as long as I have, attempting to ease the heat of Arinda's opinions at times. My love for the city and my belief that you have some true intentions inside of you means I will do what I can to get you an audience, but I cannot in good conscience vouch for your character. I cannot in good conscience say that you are upstanding citizens of this city. I hope you understand that, Elwyn.
Yeah?
And I hope that following this favour, if you will, our paths will not cross again.
That is what you want?
I do not know the truth of your claims, but the Emperor will be able to understand what truth there is in what you say, and if you have come here with ill intentions, then I shall happily report your hanging in the record, Elwyn. And he turns, he just carries on that the same direction, walks up, carries on walking towards the sort of grounds of the palace. And there is a guardhouse just outside the sort of the main sort of grounds, where Levi stops, and you can see the guards sort of they sort of nod and they acknowledge him by name. They sort of call him Mr. Atwood, and he tells them that he says he has a group of guests here who he believes have very important business with the Emperor, which relates to the safety of the city itself and possibly the Empire. You see one of the guard whispers to the other. They agree to see you in. And Levi stops and he turns to the guard. He says, "I have very important business. We have much work to do at the record. If you can deliver this group to the Emperor and tell him that I vouch for them." He looks at you, Elwyn, and he nods and he turns to walk away. This guard sort of looks the group of you up and down, and you can see as he looks over at you, Elwyn, and Errand, and you can see then he looks over at John, almost just sort of slows his gaze as he quite clearly, you can see he's he's quite clearly trying to look at John's ears. And you see he sort of takes a sort of big sniff. He clears his throat and spits on the ground. And he says, this way. He leads you into the grounds of the palace in the centre of Griffinstill. As you sort of head through the sort of the grounds and the gardens towards the sort of main building, you can see there's a number of guards and sort of city watch inside of the grounds themselves. He leads you up to the palace, where he speaks to a sort of late middle-aged, possibly bordering on the description of elderly human male, sort of thinning silver hair. This human looks over in your direction of the group. I will get very quickly another perception check if I can.
Ooh. I'm good at these. Like someone's on it.
Yes, John. Nice. Our elven party members. You can, although they stand slightly away from you and whisper, the three of you can just about hear the general sort of conversation. You don't catch it word for word, but you get the sort of general feel. The guard tells this gentleman that Levi Atwood has brought you here and has said that you basically passes on the message quite pretty accurately. Says that you have been vouched for by Levi Atwood, and that you have a need to speak to the Emperor on matters which pertain to the safety of the city and the Empire. You can see this older gentleman. You hear him sort of speak back to the guard, and he says, you hear him say, 2 of them are bloody elves. And you see the guard sort of shrugs and says, this is the group. This is who Levi bought, and he vouched for them, Mr. Atwood. And you see, you as you sort of hear this part of the conversation, you see this human looks over in your direction, actually, and sort of, he shakes his head. He sort of turns back to the guard and whispers again. The three of you can still hear this. You hear him say, be on high alert. They're kind of not been within these grounds for some time, and they can't be trusted at the best of times. The guard sort of slowly walks over your direction. This man follows, and his sort of tone changes quite very noticeably to the three of you that could hear the conversation. The sort of tone of the voice almost changes a little. It suddenly becomes very welcoming, somewhat disingenuous, certainly based on the conversation you overheard. And he sort of walks over and introduces himself. He says, my name is Galmus Nicholson, lead advisor to the Emperor. Before, you must understand, the Emperor has many important day-to-day duties. An audience with the Emperor is most unheard of on such short notice, especially for such varied peoples.
Quick question, sorry. They said 2 elves, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I can infer from that they have not twigged.
Certainly seems that way.
Cool.
Oh, excuse me. And then he looks around. presumably you have a leader.
I will look at Artir and kind of point to Artir. I guess you prefer to speak to our non-elf friend, and I'll step to like the back of the group.
And you see Galmus sort of looks at, and you can see you've kind of seen this look quite a few times, Arthur. You see that he clearly recognises you as a representative of Lathander, like a follower. And he says he actually looks at you and he says, my blessings to the Dawn Lord.
Just bow my head slightly. And blessings upon you.
Tell me, this threat to the city, you wish to speak to the Emperor. What kind of threat?
It's something with great potential. I'm not sure if you've heard what's happened in other areas of Thentos already, but it's to do with the individual known as the Uniter.
And you can see Galmus sort of just lets out a slight sort of chuckle, quite belittlingly towards this sort of subject, and he says to you, "We've heard much of this Uniter and his war against the gods. That, from what I understand that's a problem for the people of Shate to deal with. His issues seem primarily with them. I'm sure they will work it out amongst themselves how to deal with it."
It was a problem for the people of Shate to deal with until Shate's major cities were usurped, and he's now in your country.
I can assure you, reports of this building force on the island of Blyburn are much overplayed. We have a garrison there. Things are very much under control. This is mostly, if you'll excuse my attitude towards the man who brought you here, but this is mostly a stirring, if you will, of the writers. This is nothing to be concerned about. One man and his disagreements with the gods are no greater concern of the Emperor.
What was this guy's name again? He introduced himself, didn't he?
Yes, Galmus Nicholson.
Nicholson. I forgive me for if this sounds rash or comes across as rude, but Mr. Nicholson, I am telling you, this is an issue that your city and your country needs to deal with or be aware of. We have experienced firsthand that this is an issue that your city and your country needs to be aware of. Only a fool at this point would turn their back, leave it to some other country because they think that it's beneath them. It's not for them to deal with.
Oh, I didn't mean to click that. I think everyone's got a random.
He's not happy with me, is he? Fucking hell.
That was an entire misclick on my mouse.
He's kind of foxy.
You can see this. Galmus clearly does not have a lot of interest in your claim or in this wider threat, and he doesn't really go out of his way to hide that particularly, as much as he tries to maintain some sort of welcoming atmosphere in general towards you. I will take your message to the Emperor, but he is most busy this morning, and I suspect the the likelihood of an audience this week would be most unlikely, but I will deliver your message and you can stay here with the guard.
Galmus. Try and grab him before he turns to walk away. Like I try and grab his
Grab him?
attention,
Oh,
not
oh.
physically grab his attention.
Yeah, he turns back towards you.
Have you ever fought a dragon?
I suppose I could ask you the same question.
You could. But I asked first.
No, I have never fought a dragon. We live in times of peace in the Empire. I don't know... I can't speak for the experiences of your group as a whole. But this is... The Empire is a peaceful and protected land. We look after our own.
Is this city equipped and built with defences to defend against a dragon?
This city has stood against many a threat. Some of those threats attempt to get their grasp within the city again. And he doesn't make much of an attempt, if any, to not make it quite clear that this is a very sideways directed towards the two elves he's identified in the party. A dragon, frankly, would be the least of our concerns.
You have no idea, do you? You really don't. We need an audience with the Emperor. He needs to hear this. Your distrust for members of my party serves no purpose here. Distrust them all you want. But I am here on a quest from a power higher than yours. And this message needs to be passed on, and it needs to be passed on by someone that's going to tell it properly.
We're all about persuasion checks at the moment. You are a sincere and somewhat intimidating presence, Arthur.
Yep.
He still keeps a... There is a... Not mocking, but a slightly, I suppose, sarcastic tone. As he says, You're most convinced of the importance of your message, follower of the light. I will go warn the Emperor now of your dragon. And he
It's not the dragon. It's not the dragon you need to worry about. It's the thing riding it.
Quite. And he turns and he sort of walks over into the sort of palace and away into a sort of side
As
room.
he starts to leave, Aaron will step forward and say, Master Nicholson, tell your Emperor that Abahan has not forgotten what Austril did, but considers the threat from the Uniter great enough to talk to you.
And Galmus sort of stops. He listens to what you have to say, and he turns around. And he takes a few steps forwards, and he looks at you quite clearly, Aaron. And he replies. He tells you, and you could tell Abahan that Austril and her people have not forgotten what the elves of Shate did. We've not forgotten the blood of so many of our own lost. Sometimes the only way to prevent evil is hard, difficult choices. And perhaps if your people could come together and agree on something for once, you would understand that. But your petty squabbling takes up far too much of your time, as I understand it.
No elf would cut off an arm to remove a splinter.
Arms have their uses to the body, and from what I recall, Shate was never really much of a contributor. Forgive me, I will go pass on your message. He turns and carries on walking. That guard, clearly, it's certainly a, maybe not outright aggression, but sort of takes a step forward and stands in front of Errand at this point, clearly trying to sort of just usher a step back. Not necessarily outright aggression, but clearly a show of sort of dominance.
Aaron's going to attempt a roll. I'm gonna. Where is it? There it is. Do I want to roll intimidation? That's probably. Or would I roll? No, I'm gonna roll intimidation. So click it. Come on, roll. Nothing is happening at all. That's not great. Oh, okay. Just roll a d20 then. No, one of those. Literally just to see how she can stand up to him. No, exactly half. Yeah, so she will stand her ground just about.
Yeah.
But she's a lot shorter than him.
Yeah, and this guard just stands there, doesn't really say anything to you, kind of just keeps your gaze. There's a good sort of 5-6 feet between you. He's not sort of in your face, but there is a clear just attempt to sort of a reminder of who's in charge, sort of thing. Yeah, you guys are left to wait for a good 5 minutes or so. So gone.
Once when we're waiting, Erend will turn to Elwyn and again in Elvish, just say, "You live here. How can you live? How can you live with them?"
Rather easily, apparently.
Yeah. He's obviously Elwyn's embarrassed. Fine.
Yeah,
Aaron
you
glare at people.
You wait a few minutes. Galmus comes back through this sort of side door. And he walks over to you. He stops, stands beside that guard, and he says, apparently you are rather lucky. The Emperor has decided that he has a rather small window in his diary where he can fit you in now. He turns, he sort of gestures for you all to follow, and then he stops after a few steps, and he turns around and he looks at you, Aaron. He says, I do feel rather inclined to remind you of who you are gaining an audience with here. Perhaps your rather rebellious attitudes would be best served kept to yourself. And he turns and sort of just gestures. That guard sort of just holds her hand to the side and sort of gestures for you all to follow Galmus. You're led down a couple of sort of hallways before you come to what looks to be like a dining room, perhaps. There's a table and there's a number of pieces of paintings and tapestries around the room. You can it doesn't even take a great amount of knowledge. You can have a look. You can see some of these pieces of art would be probably extremely valuable. Some of them are certainly very old. Some look newer. But there is a general sense of sort of there is a lot of value in this room. This is clearly a room of some amount of sort of exquisite taste and worth. Galmus gestures for you all to sit at the table, and he tells you, the Emperor will be with you in just a moment.
Many thanks.
Yeah, you also can sort of take seats around the table. Galmus takes a seat at the table himself, and you only wait 60 seconds or so at most before a human in his sort of early to mid 60s, bald head, very quite soft features, doesn't look like someone that has done many days of hard labour in their life. Walks in a not. This isn't a sort of over the top regal outfit, but the clothing has this sort of colourful blue jacket. So you can just see this is a very well tailored sort of made sort of outfit and clothing. This is something that has been sort of made bespoke quite clearly. Those of you with any sort of familiarity would, if you've sort of read the record in the past or anything like that, you would recognise this as Elliot Austriel, the emperor of the Austro Empire, grandson of William Austriel, the man who initially enacted the Austriel curse via the Staff of Willing. He walks in. Galmus immediately stands to his feet and says, Emperor, this is the group who have this message of such great importance to deliver. They have many warnings of threats and this uniter we have heard of, and dragons. And the Emperor, you see, he sort of gestures. He sort of gestures for Galmus to stop, and he says, "This is fine, Galmus. They will have their chance to deliver their message themselves. You don't need to speak on their behalf." And yeah, the Emperor takes a seat around the table. He doesn't take... There's not like a seat at the head of the table. He sits just at a normal chair around the table like the rest of you. There's a sense that, although this is clearly someone of wealth and importance, certainly seems more personable than you may have expected, meeting someone of their sort of level and stature. And he takes a seat and he says, actually, we should start on the correct note. You are guests here. He turns to that guard. He says, drinks, just some fresh water, please, for these guests. They're here for a message, and we will treat them as respected guests." And the guard nods at the Emperor and sort of turns and walks away.
Is he wearing the ring?
Oh, a very, very fine question. Let's get you all to make a perception check.
Oh, I'm good at these. Here we go. If I take my helmet off, can I have advantage?
You take your helmet off, all the rest of us get minuses. What's the fuck is the minus? Oh, damn it.
Nice. He has a number of rings actually across the two hands. You can see he has 4 different rings on his fingers. Elwyn, Nix, and Errand, you recognise a ring on his right hand, sat on his middle finger of his right hand, is from the distance you're at across the table, you are about as sure as you could be, about as certain as you could be. This is a match for the ring you found with Kulgar, and the ring you found in Abahan and handed over and left at the Citadel of the Sun. This is either a matching ring or a exquisite copy. Yeah, he looks over at, he sort of looks around the table and he says, Levi Atwood vouches for you himself. This is most interesting. I put much worth in Levi's words and character. How do you all know Mr. Atwood?
I am the only one that actually knows him.
And your relationship?
Employee. Or former employee now.
The record.
Yeah.
Impressive. Would I have read any of your work?
I wasn't much of a writer. I was more of a helper.
Interesting. Well, perhaps maybe some of the investigations and journalism you've helped with in the past may have been something I've read. I'm mostly aligned with the general output of the record. I believe it serves a good purpose for the people of the Empire. Forgive me for skipping too many of the niceties, but you claim to be here with a warning of some type.
I will let our holy man speak more of us for the information. I'll point at us here again. Gotta have our charismatic man do the talking.
Has no one got a higher charisma than me?
We're all minuses.
I think we discussed this last time. Yes. And thank you for meeting us on such short notice.
On Christmas.
It's as I'm sure your compatriot here explained, as he said he would. There is more that is currently being given across as a threat from the individual you may know as the Uniter. We have seen his capabilities in taking over and destroying cities, places, that should not have fallen. He is incredibly strong in, arcane arts, dangerous magic that is well beyond the scope of a normal practitioner. He, rides a beast stronger than anything we've seen, and he is on a mission collecting artifacts of great power, and we believe one of them resides with you, and we need to warn you about it.
Galmus interjects before Elliot Ostriel can say anything. He says, you speak of the Staff of Willing. We are well aware of this Uniter's claims to have the staff, and we do not believe that to be true.
With all due respect, Mr. Nicholson, that's not what I speak of.
The Emperor speaks up at this point. He says, so you believe there is something else within the city, within Griffinsteel, which this Uniter has a desire for?
Can I point to his finger of that ring that I noticed?
Yeah, absolutely.
I see him point, I assume, because I haven't seen the ring at this point.
No.
But I've been trying to look, but
I will point to the ring.
Yes, there is. We've come across a few artifacts of very similar nature in the last month or so that all serve a very similar purpose. Can I ask now, what do you know of Harathos?
You can see the sort of Emperor you can see sort of eyes sort of move up slightly as he sort of attempts to recall knowledge. He says, Harathos was one of the 3 old gods before the new gods came and struck down the old gods, as I believe Galmus as that's how it is be correctly worded, I suppose. Not the most understanding of gods, I believe the older gods to be, but if I am if I'm wholly honest, and you do not mind me saying so, I'm not, how shall we say, wholly aligned with gods at times.
I think that's entirely fair, and I respect that. That's an opinion shared by many, especially in the world we live in, that the gods have not helped them and the gods have caused issues. So I understand and respect that decision. The old gods, as you've called them there, the three old gods were supposedly struck down, yes. In varying degrees of success, though. Not in
See his
the
head sort of tilts slightly as you say that.
not in the great triumphant way that is reported. Two of the three old gods were slain by Tyr. The third, Parathos, was too powerful for even Tyr to defeat. So, as a measure to remove Harathos from this world, to stop Harathos's influence, Harathos has been sealed away for years and years and years since the fall of the old gods. There are 5 artifacts imbued with the power of Arathos and capable of unbinding Arathos from his prison.
As this conversation goes on, by the way, you can see he actually, his left hand, his fingers begin sort of, as you're having this conversation, just sort of playing with that, not playing, just sort of twiddling that ring, sort of moves it slightly. There is a sort of just some motion around it. Carry on.
The Uniter seeks to collect and use these 5 artifacts in an effort to unseal and return Harathos to his full power. Now, obviously, as I'm sure you can imagine, that's not something we'd want to happen. But even if this Uniter gets halfway to unsealing Harathos, every artifact they collect and use, they gain and siphon some of this power from the old gods and become stronger and stronger. We've already seen the Uniter take control of half of... Oh, what's the city called? Not Abahan.
Kanusk.
Kardusk. We've seen the influence the Uniter can have. He can end someone's life with a whisper from his mouth. The power he already holds is incredible, but not insurmountable. But if he gets more of these artifacts, he will become unbeatable.
I apologise for a million perception and persuasion checks, but can I get everyone to make a perception check as Galmus leans in, whilst you're delivering some of that conversation, leans in and whispers into the Emperor's ear? Arthur, as you are sort of speaking, you see Galmus sort of lean in and whisper into the Emperor. Elwyn, you're the only one that gets a clear sort of hearing on what is whispered, as Galmus just leans into the Emperor and whispers, he sort of leans into the Emperor, and you just hear him whisper that essentially he tells the Emperor that perhaps this group knows more about the staff than we believed. The Emperor the Emperor sort of replies to you, Arthur, and says, and as he's speaking to you, he is that the just two fingers, the thumb and sort of index finger of his left hand, just keep sort of just fiddling with that ring on his right hand, sort of moving it around. Just not, he's not even taking it off, just sort of spinning it around slightly, moving it around, just a little bit, sort of just constant movement and motion around it. And he says to you, so these 5 artifacts, as you call them, you believe one of them is here in the city?
We are.
Alan again points to his ring finger.
Don't point.
To his ring.
I've not said the word ring on purpose.
As you point the second time, Elwyn, the Emperor turns to you. He says, what is the problem?
Apologies for my friend here. They don't often deal with nobility and the like. They're not very up to date with their proper procedure. Apologies. I believe they've just seen nice fancy jewellery and got excited. Isn't that right, Elwyn?
Get you to make a deception check, please.
Fuck's sake. Nope.
Galmus speaks up before the Emperor can say anything and says, your elven friend clearly has some kind of problem. And he looks directly over at Elwyn. If you have something to say and something you wish to make clear, then say it, elf.
Oh, that's the ring the king's playing with, right? The Emperor, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that ring Mr. Emperor is playing with, I'm guessing he already knows what we're talking about.
You see the Emperor he looks confused. Ignore Pepper.
No. Oh.
Go on.
Well, I was going to say, can I use my divine sense
Yeah, certainly.
as I'm sat here? I guess it's as well as doing the insight check, but the insight check is shite. But
We are all about the social checks this evening.
but yeah, I would like to know if he is affected by the Hallow spell or if he's celestial fiend or undead.
You get no reading, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Erend is starting to look a little bit fidgety, and her eyes are darting actually around the party, but mostly between Elwyn and Arthur. But she's not saying anything. She's just starting to look nervous.
Nix and Errand, you both get a bit of a read on the Emperor. He seems very confused by whatever it is Elwyn is sort of accusing or kind of putting out there currently. This, as Elwyn says that, he believes that the Emperor knows what they're talking about. You two certainly get the sense the Emperor does not know what Elwyn is talking about. He does not seem very... There is certainly no... You get no reading of any kind of sort of sense of malice or deception at all. He seems rather confused and taken aback by the way this conversation has turned. Galmus goes to speak, and the Emperor almost just sort of cuts him off. He says, if you believe that I have some greater knowledge of this, then please, no member of this empire is below the ability to question even me. If you believe you come here with some kind of accusation, then come out with it, and let's at least be honest.
I go to save. I'm going to look at Atar and see if he's looking angry at me.
I got a helmet on, mate. You ain't got a fucking clue.
Yeah, it's beady eyes.
I have narrowed my eyes at you. Yes.
I'll just look at Atar and go, are you going to tell him or shall I?
Emperor, I again apologise. I'm sure my elven friend here meant no accusation or insult by what they said. Simply, it's been, and I cannot be more frank about this. It's been a long 3 weeks. He is referring to an artifact, an item of jewellery you are currently wearing. I don't know how it came into your possession. I don't know if you know how it came into your lineage's possession, even. But there is a ring on your left hand that is one of these artifacts.
Galmus interjects at this point. He turns to the Emperor, or speaks to him. He says, Emperor, please, we will not entertain these strange accusations and nonsense. They come here telling us of dragons and threats, and they have the audacity to come in here and accuse you, and we do not have time for this. This is a waste of our time, Emperor.
Just remind me, who else is in the room? You've got Galmus.
Currently, just your party, Galmus and the Emperor. The guard was sent to get some water and has not returned.
Well's a long way away.
So yeah, it's just your party and the two of them currently.
It's 5th level.
Why do you want Nick to get his gun out?
I'm sat am I sat next to you, Aaron? I assume you would have sat next to either myself or Elwyn because of nerves.
Yeah.
Do I see Aaron getting a bit twitchy, potentially reaching for a component pouch
yes.
or something?
Yeah, I would say yes.
If I see a hand going down to the component pouch, I'm just my left hand will just go across and just kind of gently guide the hand back away from it. And just leave it there for a second.
The Emperor, following Galmus sort of speaking out, the Emperor speaks and he says, I do not rightly know how to react to this. If you don't mind me being quite honest, I'm rather confused.
Understandably. Yes, absolutely understandably you would be. I guess the simplest question to ask at this point is, do you understand what that ring you wear on your finger is? And I point to the ring of Corrin.
This ring, which you believe to be a precious artifact of some war of the gods. This was my father's ring, and before him, his father.
I thought as much. I assumed it may well be. That tracks with what we're aware of.
In Celestial, Aaron is going to say, if he's wearing the ring, he's already lost.
Not necessarily.
Not all can. I will then, in Celestial, say not all people go to evil that easy.
Galmus speaks up again as this sort of conversation begins going. He goes, "Please at least have the decency to speak to us in a common tongue."
Apologies again. When my friend gets stressed, it's sometimes easy to slip back into a language that you have slightly more comfort in speaking. All that is being spoken about. All that was being said is that that ring and what it represents, of course, is concerning. And the fact that it's being worn was just a concern. Now, having obviously had this discussion and knowing you to be the person that you are, Emperor, of course we would not even consider accusing you of being tempted by or in league with any of this horrific stuff. But that ring is dangerous. And it's worrying to see it being worn, especially if you're saying you don't even know what it actually does.
I can assure you, you are most mistaken. This ring was my father's and my grandfather's. It weighs, I wear it daily as a reminder of the things they did differently than I. And that as much as I may not always agree with the decisions they made in their time as Emperor, the weight of their decisions is carried in it.
I understand. I completely understand. Have you... Or, I guess what I'm asking or trying to ask here is, are you aware of the enchantments that ring may hold on it?
And he turns to Galmus at this point. He says, Galmus, how can you please put these people straight? There is no enchantment on the ring. This is a family heirloom. It is not... It has nothing to do with gods, new or old. This is a reminder of what makes me different from those that came before me. Even as part of the same bloodline, I do not have to be weighed by their decisions and their actions. Galmus, please. Galmus...
Empress. No, go on.
No, go for it, please.
Empress Per. Firstly, sorry for speaking up in such revered presence as yourself, but well, thank you for inviting us into this. Well, most beautiful place. Never been quite somewhere like this before. It's very, very nice, and thank you for the water, most refreshing and all that. But listen, the way I see it, is it doesn't really matter if this is a real ring of powerful magic or whatever, or just a family heirloom. If we use it right, then the world is coming, and if you use it right, then no bother. So you might as well trust us. And if the world doesn't end, you can have the ring back. If the world does end, then you know we was right. Well, hopefully we'll stop it. But you know what I'm saying, don't you?
Galmus leans over. I'm gonna call for the billionth perception check. Galmus leans over and whispers something into the Emperor's ear again. Oh, John.
Is John on the natural 20s again?
It's not paying attention.
That's alright, because I've got my natural 10 to help, so...
Yeah, John. As you sort of finish your statement, you sort of see Galmus lean over and whisper into the Emperor's ear. You're the only person that hears this sort of particular message. He leans over and he just whispers into the Emperor's ear and he says, perhaps once they leave, we should have a discussion. The Emperor, you see, he sort of just turns. He just sort of nods at Galmus, and he turns back and he sort of speaks to you initially, John. He says, "You are most welcome. Although I do not have as much time as I would like for the people of Griffinsteel and the Empire. The ability for anyone's thoughts and feelings and opinions to be heard is something I feel is most essential. All are welcome to voice their beliefs in this empire, and I will not have it any other way. And he looks at Galmus as he says that, and you get the sense that although these two are clearly work together, there is a maybe tension would be overstating it, but there clearly is a difference of opinions in general on how they go about their business.
When the others have been sort of talking about the ring and talking about that sort of stuff, has Galmus sort of reacted in an off way? I'm wondering if he knows more about it than the Emperor.
The checks just keep on coming. I feel like I'm throwing just continual perception and insight checks, but I feel that each one's relevant and separate enough to roll for. So,
And yet I'm doing great still.
I'm not doing well at all either.
None of you have a particularly clear read as you sort of look on. Galmus is clearly not as friendly or as welcoming as the Emperor's been in your conversation. In terms of if you get a particular sense of him hiding knowledge or anything like that, not particularly. No, you don't get any clear read. There's clearly he's far less interested in whatever your message is than the Emperor. The Emperor at least seems willing to hear you out. But no, you don't get any distinct reading of him withholding knowledge himself or anything, no. Go on.
Sir, Emperor, I was wondering, what's your opinion personally? Not the law, of course. I know what the law is, but what's your opinion personally on magic? Are you in favour of genuine magic, or are you still a bit cautious of it? Because if that ring on your finger there is magic, that might make you feel a bit uncomfortable, perhaps. And some of these companions here of mine, they come from different parts of the world where maybe magic is a bit more, common, and they might know how to check whether that's magic or not. And if we were to tell you if it's magic or not, it was magic, then perhaps that would leave some credence to this idea that it is a magical ring from a magical god, but it does involve us using the magic, which is illegal. So, but you're the Emperor, so I'm sure you can make an exception if that was to be good for you, and you agreed with that. I don't know what you think about that.
The Emperor smiles at your sort of logic, and he says to you, my experience of magic is rather limited, I suppose you could say. I have, being from the family and the upbringing I've had, I've seen some magic at childhood birthday parties and social events that perhaps the average citizen has never had the chance to see. But whether, I suppose I'm undecided on my wider opinion. When you have lived a life where magic is not the norm, it's quite hard to decide what your feelings would be, I suppose. Galmus sort of interjects quite quickly and points out, you clearly understand, Emperor, this idea that they believe the item is magic, so they will be able to ascertain on your behalf whether it is. The answer will quite clearly be in the affirmative. And he looks over at the group, Galmus, and he says to you, unless you plan to surprise us by telling us you were wrong.
We have a man of God with us. He will not lie in the name of his God.
And the Emperor speaks up at this point, and he says, you... And he looks over in your direction, Arthur, and he says, again, no disrespect intended, but my personal experience with the gods is that they take a more backseat role than I believe people with their kinds of powers perhaps should. And maybe my trust in their decisions and their word is not as strong as others in this room.
Oh, I don't trust the gods. I just trust in Altair's belief in his god.
Galmer speaks up again at this point, and he's quite clearly had enough of this at this point. He speaks up. He says, "Emperor, we have given the best part of 30 minutes of your day to these nobodies. They've made their point. They've come here and told you their story, and they've warned us of their dragons and their gods and their magical rings. But I implore you, Emperor, there are much better ways your time can be spent today." You see the Emperor sort of turns to Galmus, and he sort of hears him. He turns back to the party. He looks over to you, Arthur, as the sort of one that has delivered most of this sort of information so far. And he says to you, "Okay, man of the Dawn Lord. If I am to put my faith blindly into your opinion of whether this item is magical or not, the smallest courtesy you could afford me would be to look upon the man who delivers this message."
I appreciate the sentiment behind the notion you've made. To remove my helmet in front of anyone that is not a member of my citadel would have me labelled an outcast, a heretic. I could not do that. As much as I would not ask you to do something that would remove you from your position and from your place in society. I would assume you would not do the same.
Can you make a persuasion check, Arthur? You see, the sort of Emperor goes quiet for a moment. He's not playing with the ring as sort of vigorously as he was, but he still has two of the fingers sort of on it. And you see, he turns, he looks at Galmus, just in silence for a few moments. He turns back, sort of collectively across the table, just at the party, and he says, "Okay. What does it involve?"
Do any of us have detect, identify, prepared, or as ritual?
No.
I thought we would.
Identify?
Mm.
Well, of course.
Hey, there's always someone ready.
Thank fuck.
I'm an officer after all.
The process is it's truly quite simple. John here is able to identify the abilities and the strengths of magical artifacts. All it would involve is you taking the ring off of your finger and placing it on the table in front of them.
As you mention that guard finally comes back with a large sort of pitcher of water and some glasses. He places them on the table, and the Emperor says, "Thank you. You've returned just in time. This group wish to take into their possession temporarily an item of much value to me. I trust you will be most happy for this guard to at least stand armed in the situation that there may be any attempt of theft or disagreement here."
Seems entirely sensible and a fair insurance policy on your side, yes.
Okay. There's an air of tension in the room. It is quite clear in the silence. Galmus does not seem comfortable with this situation. The guard stands there. He is armed, but he doesn't have his weapons drawn, but clearly is in some state of alert currently. And the Emperor, he toys with that ring a few times on his finger again. You can see he sort of looks down. He looks down at his hands. He's doing it. You can almost hear him thinking aloud as he's sort of playing out the various ways this could go, I suppose. Trying to sort of make sense of whatever is happening.
To mildly, not off topic, but out of the situation currently question. The stuff we've looked at previously with these rings and the ones we've identified previously,
Yes.
were we under any kind of impression or anything that if someone was to attune to it, they would have some kind of curse or anything like that on the item that would try to keep them attuned to it?
So, from what I recall, from what you guys remember, you can tell me if any of this you didn't know, and if you didn't know it, then you know it now, I guess.
I will forget it, it's fine.
You were aware that the rings appear to have some amount of shape shifting type abilities. They also appeared to have some amount of spell casting abilities themselves. Some charges. Yep.
And they have a draw to want to do something, is what I seem to remember.
Yes, and I believe, and I'm pretty sure you knew this, so I don't think I'm going to ruin anything. They required attunement, but it seemed that attunement was not a normal process of attunement.
Yes, you did say that.
There was some kind of... It wasn't as simple as just attuning like a standard magic item. There seemed to be something extra involved, yes. Cool. Okay. That's kind of the extent of your knowledge. There's certainly no... There's no sort of outward knowledge of any kind of curse or effects beyond that you have thus far, no.
Okay.
Then yeah, like I say, you can almost hear him thinking out loud, the Emperor. And then he pulls the ring over his knuckle and down to it just sort of meets his fingernail at the end of his finger.
Teasing us.
And he stops again and he says, fine. He pulls the ring over the end of his finger and holds it between his thumb and his middle finger of his left hand. And he turns almost just sort of in passing to Galmus, and he says, "You have no idea the weight this ring places on me. As if both of them constantly judge my every decision." And then he places it down in the middle of the table. He looks over, just looks into your helm, Arthur. He says to you, "I hope you will not make me regret my trust in you." And then he just sort of sits back in the chair slightly as the ring sits in the middle of the table.
Does it change form at all when it's taken on?
No.
I'm assuming not.
No.
Cool. Um, I say, all right. Give me a second. Let me just have a. And before I actually cast it, I say, just to be clear, this is some magical sort of capabilities. And so just I want your assurances that I won't be arrested or beheaded or none of that stuff for this
Uh,
before I do it. Otherwise,
the emperor actually, as you sort of break the tension, he actually laughs. And he says, "No, my friend, you will not be beheaded for following through on our agreement." And you see, even as he sort of finishes it, he sort of chuckles to himself and sort of sits back in the chair and seems. There's almost like a sense of gratitude that you kind of broken that sort of moment of tension in the room.
right, you are very gracious. Your emperorship. Uh, thank you very much. And yeah, can't identify.
Because they
Yeah.
would pass the ring down the table to John.
Yeah,
I
John,
can't pass identify.
What?
It's just slow internet.
Oh, right, okay.
On my behalf.
you take the ring into your hand. As soon as you take hold of it, even pre-identify, you immediately, this is a magic item, no doubt. You have been around enough magic items, you can just sort of feel there's a slight change in the sort of properties around it. You can almost feel like a very slight aura around it. This is a magic item, no doubt. And there is this really incredibly awkward silence around the room now, as the five of you kind of, or four of you, I suppose, watch John as he sort of holds the item and spends the minute of it takes to cast identify. You can see the Emperor is sat back in his chair. There is definitely an air of uncertainty. You certainly get the sense he's not still convinced that he's not being sold snake oil right now. That guard stands there watching very closely, almost stood over John. Probably trying to be a little intimidating. Galmus just kind of sits there quite quietly. You get the sense he's probably in a similar position to the Emperor, where he's just not really sure what's going on here. And that 60 seconds of tension really sort of drags out. John, you begin to get a read on the item in your hands. This is a magic item. This is a extremely powerful magic item. It does require attunement, but even as you're sort of holding it, you are familiar with attuned items. You have attuned to items daily. This is not a case of an item where normally attunement is almost a moment of meditation where you just kind of bring yourself almost into alignment with the magic item itself. There's something more to this. You get the sense that you couldn't sit here with this item now and attune to it. There is some kind of requirement, need, maybe even a sense of a test involved. There's just this sort of sense that you're not able to attune to it. Almost it doesn't really want you to attune to it, John. The ring certainly has some sort of transmutational properties. You get the sense that someone who has attunement and with the ring could change its shape quite willingly. It also gives you this overwhelming sense of power and influence. Again, you just feel, it's almost like, although you can't attune to it, you can almost feel what the benefits would be of doing so. It would just give you this sort of way with people of deceiving and persuading them in some kind of proficient manner. And then there is also a sense of charges to the item, to the ring. There is a sense of it almost having magic, as well as it being a magic item, of it being able to create or cast magic. It's certainly a item which is capable of casting spells if attuned to it. And you do get an understanding of some of those spells. You recognise the sort of just general sense around them. This is capable of casting Death Ward, of Dominate Person, of Firestorm, of Geas, of Glibness, of Suggestion, and of True Seeing.
There's a few new ones in there.
There are a few new ones in there. I believe you had some of those previously, yeah.
Yeah.
Did I identified at least one of the other rings, right?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
This is this is you kind of, you almost feel like the fact that this isn't the first time you've identified one of these is kind of giving you this deeper understanding of it. You are
Okay. I also sort of
you are certain this is one of the rings. Yeah, you are beyond any kind of doubt, John.
awesome. Well, would you like the good news or the bad news?
The good news, I suppose.
The good news is I was right. The bad news is that means the world's going to end, or at least people are trying to make it end, and we've got to try and stop it. See, this ring here is quite a powerful artifact, and it does require some particular sorts of motions to go through to to use it properly. But so possibly why you've never used it. But did you never really feel like it was magical when you touched it? Because surely when you do you not feel that sort of that buzzing, as it were, the electricity, the energy flowing from it when you touch it?
The Emperor sort of sits forward, goes to speak, and before he even does, Galmus, not overly aggressive, but actually just sort of slams a hand down onto the table. He says, Emperor, we should not entertain this anymore. I told you they were going to tell you what they wanted to tell you from the beginning. They were always going to tell you this was the item they were looking for. That much was very clear from the beginning. This charade has gone on frankly long enough. If you do not mind me saying, Emperor, your father and your grandfather would not have entertained this nonsense for as long as you have, and they most certainly would not have entertained elves coming with these nonsense and lies of all types. If you don't mind me saying, the goal of it, this has gone on long enough, and I must speak up.
But talking of the grandfather, actually, where is the old staff of Willing?
And Galmus sort of leans forward again, sort of speak up, and the Emperor sort of, for the first time, shows some amount of anger or sort of drive, as he says, Galmus, your role is as an advisor in this room, and I would remind you, your allegiance to my father and my grandfather is well respected, as is your counsel, but please do not tell me who is and is not welcome in my home. And he leans forward and he sort of turns away from looking at you, Arthur. He looks at John at this point. And you can tell, John, he's trying to get a read on you at this point, the Emperor. And he says, so you tell me that you came here searching for an item, and you do enough to convince me to give you an item of importance. And as Galmus quite correctly points out, is not a leap of logic to assume that were you disingenuous in your intentions, the answer would always have been that this was the object you seek. You can at least understand where, forgive him for his bluntness, but where his distrust in this would come from. Agreed?
Yep.
So look me in the eyes look me in the eyes, and tell me you are here with true intentions.
Emperor,
100%, sir.
He turns to you, Errand.
my these people came to my city, came to Abahan, knowing that Abahan also was home to one of Corin's rings. They told their wild story, and the Order of the Magi considered it and decided that it was true. Abahan handed over the ring that they held to these people, and they took it to the Citadel of Lathander. There is nothing that I can say that would convince your advisor of the truth of this, but I can only tell you that the greatest minds in Abahan considered holding the ring in their city to be the greatest threat to their city. And we've come to tell you the same. The Uniter will come for that ring, and you will not be able to stop him.
Galmus clears his throat at this point. Emperor, if you'll forgive me, as part of my duties as an advisor to your father before you, and to you since his death, that has made me privy to information which perhaps is not suited for wider knowledge. Your father was a cold man, and it's no secret he had his doubts about your willingness or your abilities to lead following your brother's untimely death. There are things your father did not believe you strong enough to be responsible for. I take no great joy in saying these elves come here with some element of truth in their claims. The ring did belong to your grandfather, and the claims your grandfather made to your father was that the ring was given to him as a means, a show of his power and his right and responsibility to lead. It was not the only ring. We know there were others. What they say is true. That much is true. And for some time, two of those rings were here in Griffinsteel. If you do not mind me saying, Emperor, perhaps it is time that these guests left, and we can continue this conversation in the correct privacy. You see, the Emperor kind of sits back for a moment. You saw that first sign of sort of something approaching anger when he spoke over Galmus previously. And this time you can see a mixture of anger and disappointment sort of has built in the Emperor. He reaches over towards you, John, and he says, "The ring, please, if you will."
I will probably shoot a look to. I won't say archery, but he's got a helmet on, so probably can't see very much with his eyes. Probably then Alwyn, and just see whether they
I will
have got
kind
any
of
sort of
nod
nods
and
or suggestions about what I should do.
yeah, I will nod and approval of giving it back to him. We mainly came. I want to say we mainly came here to
Yeah,
confirm
I'll
this
give him
is
that.
the ring, and that it needs to be protected, and it cannot get in the hands of the Uniter.
You pass it back.
Yeah, it's back. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the Emperor takes the ring back from you. You see, he goes to put it on, then he stops, and he says, he looks back at you, John. He says, "Is it safe to wear?"
Well, I don't really know. I mean, I think so. Just well, maybe on a bit of a chain around your neck, just in case.
And
Because if
he
it gets hold of you, it'll be mighty nasty.
and the Emperor actually, he sort of, you raise a smile from him again. And then he places the ring down on the table in front of him. He turns to Galmus at this point, and he says, "I will remind you, Galmus, that you may have served my father for some time, but since his death, I am your Emperor. Any such information you have kept from me up to this point is part of the reason why we could be in this situation of distrust. You spent the past hour arguing against these people whilst knowing some element of truth to their claims, and yet you claim to have my best interests in your heart. Excuse me for wondering if perhaps these strangers come here with truth in their hearts compared to yours. I suggest, if you know, as you say, there is another of these rings within the city, Galmus, that there is no finer group to share that information with than the group that have brought this to our attention honestly. Galmus has a bit of a gulp. He's clearly a little uncomfortable currently. And he does say, Emperor, I thought maybe my wording was clear. There were 2 rings in this city. One ring your father wore. The other ring was kept below the archives on the lower levels. Was stored there for as long as I can remember, as long as I served your father, it was stored there. However, there was an incident around, I don't know, 25 years ago maybe. Some creatures, strange creatures from a plane not quite like our own, invaded, broke in to the lower levels, and the ring was taken. I believe your father never put much belief in the idea that the rings were quite as powerful as this group claimed to be, and so the fact that it was missing was considered no worse than any other magical artifact going missing. Since then, we, through some magic of our own, we were able to dull the means of transport these creatures used. But that also went wrong recently. You may have heard some of the advisors talking of an incident in the lower storage levels of the archives recently. We have reasons to believe these were the same creatures.
Alan will now put his hand up. I was one of the people who went down in the archives and saw these creatures.
Galmus looks over at you, and before he can say anything, that guard speaks up. The guard looks at the Emperor and speaks directly to the Emperor and says, "My lord, if you will, the elf speaks truth. I was one of the many who assisted in cleaning up the rubble and the damage in the archives. I saw him there."
Erin is just looking at this a little bit. She vaguely remembers the story, but she obviously didn't live it. Meanwhile, on a different plane, Carl is fucking fuming.
Elwyn will send a 25-word update on this at some point, don't worry.
I'll message him about this.
He has opinions on this.
Owen does as well, but he's trying to keep his cool with the Emperor in the room.
The Emperor kind of sits silent, and then he speaks to Galmus, and he says, "Your service to my family has been admired for some time, Galmus. You have served admirably, and I do believe that you have, for the most part, done what you think is best for the Emperor, for the Empire and its people. Your services will not be required beyond this morning, Galmus. You have shown yourself to be untrustworthy at a time where trust is of great importance." And he turns to that guard. He says to the guard, "I trust you serve your empire truly." And the guard nods. And the Emperor says to him, "Escort Mr. Nicholson from the property. Ensure that he returns to his own home, and that he speaks to nobody, and that he stays there until this situation is resolved and we can decide what the appropriate next steps will be for his hand in this. You may not have caused whatever this situation is, Galmus, but your lack of transparency concerns me, and it has not aided." Galmus just sort of meekly nods. He turns, he looks across the table.
Emperor, can I ask you a quick question before we continue? Something that may ease my mind here. The incident in the archives of these creatures was covered up so the public would not know, and it was blamed on a guard, if I remember correctly. I lost 3 of my friends during that incident, and one was not so happy and put out a fake report, the real report, which quickly was squashed. Were you the one that covered it up, or was it your assistant?
You can see the Emperor listens to what you say. He turns to Galmus. And he says, "I assume you know what this gentleman speaks of?" Galmus, rather meekly at this point, nods. And he says, everything I've ever done, I have done with the best interest of the Empire at heart. Your father was quite right in saying that you are not a natural leader, my lord. You've shown weakness and indecisiveness many times. And I do believe it is my council that has seen you through those difficult periods. It's not always easy to acknowledge one's own weaknesses, but it is together that we've been able to work around the weaker elements of your rule. The Emperor sort of takes a breath, and he turns to the guard, and he says, get this man out of my sight, please. The guard walks over, places a hand on Galmus' shoulder. Galmus just nods and stands up. And he looks across the table at your group, and he says, I truly hope you understand the gravity of all of this. And then he turns and walks out of the room with the guard following him. The Emperor sort of sits there, takes a moment. Then he picks up the ring and he looks at it, and he just has it between his hand and between his thumb and his middle finger on the left hand again, just sort of holding it up. He almost just sort of speaks to himself, and he says, so many nights believing that I could feel every piece of disappointment from my father and my grandfather. And perhaps it was this, perhaps it was you all along. The dead do not have ways of speaking to us. The dead do not judge what we do. Perhaps I fooled myself into thinking I could ever prove them wrong, but they are long gone. He puts the ring back down into the middle of the table. He says, I have no need for this ring any longer. So what do you suggest we do with it?
I would personally love to destroy it, but that would do the opposite effect of what we need to happen.
It needs to be hidden. It needs to be tucked away in some inaccessible pocket of time where the Uniter cannot get his hands on it. But if I might add, it needs to be clear that it is no longer in the possession of this city, because every hour that the Uniter is under the impression it's in this city still is an hour closer to him taking the city. He won't stop till he gets it.
So you have a suggestion of where this safe place may be?
Last time we got our hands on one of these rings, we took it to my brethren in the Citadel of the Sun.
Surely it will be safe there, Gormrina.
What? Also, but wouldn't it be putting them all in the same space?
That's exactly my concern with it, is I would be scared to be taking it to somewhere where there already is one.
You mentioned...
And I... Go ahead.
What was
Go ahead.
what was the term you used? Some kind of pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
You do understand Today, I've been betrayed by a long time and highly trusted advisor. My greatest fear at this point is being betrayed a second time by people I hardly know.
I know we don't know each other very well. This is the first time you've met any of us. This is the first time you've dealt with any of us. Most of us don't even come from this city. But I'm certainly hoping at this point in time we've been proven to be honest. We've been proven to be trustworthy, at least to an extent. If there's anything else we can do to prove our trust and our allegiance to the world as a greater place, please tell us.
I think it's of great importance that I speak with my council.
I think that's sensible.
I also have my doubts about allowing you to leave whilst this situation remains unresolved. I would like to suggest you stay in the palace as guests, and this must be your choice, whilst I speak with my advisors. And you have my word, a decision will be made today on how we proceed.
I am happy with that. I will happily stay here while you discuss that.
I think that is an entirely fair suggestion and quite a sensible and pragmatic one. I think if you're to meet with advisors and your council, it may prove to be possible to potentially have this party, or at least a representative of it, present, should there be questions that are asked that you don't have the answers to. I understand that that may prove to be problematic because you want to have a discussion outside of this party, but at the same time I wouldn't want you to go to your advisors or go to your council and not be fully equipped to answer any questions they may have.
How about we be in the room next to it, and if you do have questions, you can just summon us in to answer these questions.
That would be sensible.
We could stay in the castle. Dawnbringer, I think the Emperor has questions for his council beyond what they should do next. The Emperor has been lied to. Well, the Emperor has not been told the truth by his council. I imagine the first question he is going to ask is, who else has not been telling the truth?
Should there be an issue of truth, my bond with Lathander and my devotion to the light provides me the capability to prove the truth of individuals. If that is a service you wish to invoke.
And you see there's a moment of sort of consideration as he sort of mulls this over. Then he places his palms sort of face down on the table and he says, I've been made to look a fool once today already. I believe I'm willing to risk the same result again if the potential upside is the truth and some trusted bonds built. You will all be welcome at the meeting of this council. I suggest you would be best suited in a advisory role, and that your ability to recognise the truth. And he actually smiles slightly. He says, "It would be most appreciated."
I nod my head. I gesture to the ring that I believe he's left on the table, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I say, for a decision on holding this obviously needs to be made, but we shouldn't leave it laying on a table here. Would you like me to store it on my person for the time being? That way you know it's not leaving your sight.
Oh, okay.
Right, you got teleportation circle ready, right?
Yeah, I have. But now you've said pick it up off the table. We just needed him to leave the room for 10 minutes, and we were back in Abajon.
I think we need to stay here.
Nah, we want to be here
That's
for now.
He nods, and he says, "Okay, follower of the Dawn Lord, your counsel has guided me correctly so far. As a group, you have proven yourselves trustworthy in the challenges that have come up in this strangest of mornings. If this ring is as dangerous as your friend says," and he nods over at John, "then you make a good argument." And he moves his hand towards the middle of the table, places it on the ring, and pushes it across the table towards you, Arto.
I do my usual trick, pull out my napkin, wrap it in it, stuff it in a pouch on my side.
just remind me, Dawnbringer, I wasn't completely clear when you were telling the story before, but the last time you were given a ring to look after, nothing went wrong with that at all, did it?
Correct.
Yeah, good. It didn't come and get stolen and by a ghost.
Ghosts are fucky. We don't deal with ghosts. That's being dealt with.
Yeah, the Emperor tells you he's going to gather his council advisors, and that you will be a part of that meeting. It takes around an hour or so to gather from across the city this council of elders and advisors. You are seated in a larger room at this point. There is a group of, excluding yourselves and excluding the Emperor, there's a group of nine advisors. There is the conversation begins quite clearly. The Emperor has a tone of disappointment in general as he sort of speaks to these advisors and kind of basically recounts nearly word for word the entirety of your conversation and meeting this morning with Galmus and with the Emperor. And as the Emperor begins to sort of retell the moments of Galmus essentially being exposed as having misled and hidden information from the Emperor, the tone of the conversation becomes quite clear that the Emperor is essentially challenging this council to choose a side, and almost there is a sense of this being an amnesty, I suppose, an opportunity. And you watch, there is a little bit of back and forth between some of these advisors. Some of them claim to have had no knowledge of Galmus's knowledge and what he speaks of. This conversation goes back and forth for a short while before the Emperor kind of calls a close and sort of takes back control of the conversation, and essentially lays out to these advisors that there is a wiping of the slate as of today. There is clearly a larger situation at play currently than what any of them have had to deal with. Potentially the largest situation in his time as the Emperor, and that his primary concern right now is going forwards and in how that is dealt with, and how those advisors and council essentially handle themselves in the coming days, will be how they're judged rather than maybe whatever their previous actions were. He circles back to some of the information which Galmus kind of came out on. He mentions again, he brings up quite clearly to this council that Galmus claims there was a second ring in the city, stored below the archives. At this point, an older man, wearing City Watch uniform, not full armor, but has the sort of general sort of like the identifiers of City Watch, speaks up, and he says that he was aware of the incident which Galmus mentioned. In 7123, some creatures from another plane made their way into the storage levels of the archives, and the ring which had been kept there was taken. For this guard says that for as long as he can remember, the claim that was put out to anyone that asked was that this area of storage was used for the staff of willing, but that was not true. The actual item stored there was this ring of some great power which the Emperor's father had concerns about, unfortunately kept secreted away. But these creatures took it. In the last 6 weeks or so, those same creatures have returned to the archives, and had similarly, it seemed, been taking some magic items. Some more magic items have gone missing from the archives. He speaks up and says, following the cleanup and the investigations into what happened on the lower levels, they were able to identify that these creatures, although they certainly originate from another plane than this one, their transportation in and out of the archives originated from the material plane. They came here and left, it would seem, to somewhere on the material plane, and that some of the more and he kind of pauses and looks at your group, seemingly unsure of how to carry on, and the Emperor just sort of nods at him and he says, some of the Empire's arcane users have been able, they believe, to identify the source and to potentially repeat the journey these creatures took. Should we wish to follow them and take back what has been stolen? The Emperor turns to you guys, your party, and he says to you, if we believe what Galmus has told us and what my advisors have told us, that there was another ring stored here in Griffinstill and that these creatures took it, then the next logical step, it would seem, would be to follow these creatures and find what they have done with the ring, unless you disagree.
Well,
As the only one in this group that fought them, they are quite a hard opponent.
That was like
I personally
quite-
have a mixed feeling of having Uniter and the Garbanoids fight each other could be just hoping they wipe each other out.
yes, we're under the impression that these creatures, Alwyn, you've spoken of fighting them before and the issues they posed. We're under the impression that these are no friends of Harathos, correct? These are no allies to the Uniter. So if a ring is in their possession, then that ring is, for all intents and purposes, out of the Uniter's grasp.
You make a good argument.
It strikes me as potentially our resources could be better spent in pursuing the Uniter themselves instead of going and defeating an enemy of the Uniter to get another artifact to just then have it in the city when the Uniter comes.
The Emperor turns back to this seemingly sort of military advisor, this gentleman that was speaking, and he says to him, what is our latest intelligence on Blyburn and the Uniter? And this elderly guard military spokesman speaks up, and he says, we sent a group to Blyburn. The claims appear to be true. This Uniter is amassing numbers, considerable numbers. It's unclear the source, but there is we believe he has what can best be described as a sizable army at this point. We were able to get one of our own people on the inside. And the Uniter's claims are true. The Uniter has the staff of willing. There's a few murmurs around this council, this group of advisors. The Emperor kind of urges for like some kind of quiet to come over this conversation. He looks to another one of the advisors, and he says, "How was this allowed to happen? My understanding was that the staff was heavily protected, and that very few knew of its location." And this other advisor tells him, our most talented magic users, they were responsible for protecting it. We had people in the mountains on location with it. We cast incantations daily to dull any sense of its location and to ensure that it could not be found. But apparently that wasn't enough. Perhaps if you don't mind me being quite so forward, perhaps our own moves away from arcane use has slowed our understandings and perhaps made us weaker than we could have been in that respect. If this Uniter truly has the staff, then his army is potentially irrelevant, as is ours. If the staff works as we understand it, if the staff works as your grandfather used it, whatever this Uniter wants at this point, he will have.
All the more reason to take this ring away.
The Emperor sort of turns to your group again. He says, agreed. The ring we do have needs to be secured. You were quite right. It cannot be in the same location as the other ring. We need to spread them out, and we need to ensure that as few trustworthy people as possible know their locations. Particularly when it seems so many other locations have been spread amongst more people than perhaps should have been.
Sorry, I was laughing. It's just occurred to me that we've just run across the country telling everyone that we put the ring with Lathander.
He's a god. They can't do anything about it.
I think we specifically sort of didn't tell anyone in Aberhan where we put it, but still, never mind.
To be
were
fair,
keeping it a secret.
To be fair, yeah, we've mentioned it a couple of times to a couple of people, but yeah.
I like to
You're
think
right.
I've not mentioned it. It's been Arthur every time.
Correct. Trust in
And
the
Arthur
gods.
was one that said keep it a secret as well.
Trust in the gods.
Yeah.
He turns to you, Errand. He says, as a representative of Aberhan, perhaps, and maybe you'll excuse my flawed strategy, but with this uniter, knowing the ring he sought there is no longer in Aberhan, perhaps moving one we do know of back to there could be a play.
I prefer, if for me, I feel like putting a ring with people with civilians in the areas, putting people at risk that are unknowing is not fair on them.
Our experience in Aberhan was once the ring left, the Uniter did not even approach the city. He must be able to detect it. I think.
Okay.
I think he will follow the ring wherever we take it.
He's not moved on Griffin still in this entire time. Maybe the ring stays here, and we give him no reason to suspect that we are a move ahead of him at this point.
I possibly have a suggestion of where the ring could go. Have you ever heard of a forest that you can only leave if you're of a good nature?
You speak of Needham's Grove.
Yes. I'm wondering, even if he goes there, then maybe he will end up being stuck there and cannot leave. Or he destroys it.
So you mean to trap this uniter?
It's just something we've not thought about.
That is a fantastic idea. Out of character. In character, John's bemused. But out of character, that is a great idea.
And I'm sure if he does go in there, there is a whole elf city in hiding there that he could end up fighting with. And kill each other, hopefully. But yeah, that is a suggestion I wish to put forth the group.
How would you suggest we lure him there?
Just taking the ring there. I would happily be a part of the group. I feel like I owe the god there an apology that lives in those woods.
Did you say who that was?
I cannot remember the name in out of character.
Yeah.
I think,
Jaunty, yeah.
yeah, Shanti.
Who is the wife of Lathander?
Yes.
Doesn't sound like a bad place. Taking. I think taking it there sounds like a good idea.
Okay. The Emperor sort of looks at your group and he says, okay. My advisors here have spoken. And I'm willing to back their decision. We will take the ring to Needham's Grove. We will attempt to lure this uniter and his army.
I think the second bit of that plan sounds dangerous.
Yeah.
But the
But
first
if
bit,
we ask for assistance from other races of a known enemy, we may be able to get other people to help us.
Do we think
if
we're looking at an army here, right? We're looking at this guy has an army.
he's
Yeah.
got the staff are willing,
That military advisor speaks up and says, we believe his number to be in the thousands, yes.
Okay, and what's Griffinsteel's army at this point? What's its numbers?
Griffinsteel alone could muster 1,000 men.
So if we were to use this opportunity, I suppose, as it presents itself, to put out the call to Abahan, would they be willing to provide assistance, do you think, Errand?
what to join a
To take the fight to the Uniter? Once we've safely put that ring where he can't get it, the only next thing for us to do at that point is take the fight to him. If we leave him be, all we leave him doing is sitting there with the staff, amassing more and more numbers until he's unbeatable.
I don't think Abahan will commit anything outside of the city. The high, without the High Lord in shape to command them, Abahan will sit back and protect itself, I think.
It's unfortunate.
Well, we can only ask for assistance. If they turn up, they turn up. If they don't, they don't.
What of the dwarves? Do they have an army?
Again, that same military advisor speaks up at this point. Relationships with Chalk are tense. But yes, I do believe if the severity of the threat is made clear, then they would back us.
Then I think it's time to make it clear. We can have the ring in Needham's Grove by a day's time from now if we take the lightning rail.
That's first.
You know, if we say that, if we have a week to attempt to muster allies, to attempt to bring together whoever we can,
What about there were 5 rings.
Correct.
One is here.
One's here.
One is
One's in the Citadel.
in the Citadel. One is in
One's with Carl.
One's with Carl.
One's with the Garbanoids.
One's with the Galvanoid. So there's one more.
I believe he already has one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we know he already has one, but that's my thought here, is that he must already have one.
That's fair.
We know these things change shape, right? We know these things are capable of transmuting themselves
It's a
into a
dragon.
number of different things. I think it's possibly a book.
Yeah, that. Should we not talk to the Galvanoids?
Arbanoids are evil.
They don't
Pure
like
evil.
us. They don't like us, non-tentacled folks.
They think us as food.
Errand,
Mm-hmm.
do you think you could convince the leaders, those in charge of Abahan, to have an audience with the Emperor, us, anyone from Griffinsteel, from
I
Ostra?
think yes. I think I could. Yes, I think I could arrange a conversation.
It's just they understand the threat. They get that. If they understand the severity of it, and if they're led to understand how important it is that actually we put our fucking differences aside for just even a moment to tackle the end of the fucking world, they might actually be willing to help. And then we'd have a hell of a better chance.
It's possible.
Emperor,
Yes.
would you be willing to at least talk?
You could see immediately, again, some of this council advisors begin sort of talking amongst themselves. This is a wild suggestion.
Oh, I know.
And he ignores the noise as they start murmuring and sort of talking amongst themselves. And he turns back to you and he says, I will do whatever is right for the people of the Empire. Absolutely, I'll talk with them.
I'm not asking you to build any bridges. I'm not asking you to forget any losses. I'm not asking you to bury any hatchets. But this guy's trouble, and you need all the help you can get before trouble comes knocking on your door.
Yeah, he nods. We'll call the session there. Just so I've got some level of consensus from the group. What do you want your primary next step to be? Are you? It feels like you've got 3 options, right? You've got the choice of the Garbanoids. You've got the choice of luring the Uniter to Needham's Grove, or you can reach out to Abahan.
Personally, I'm not keen on getting involved with the Garbanoids.
I also
No.
feel like leaving the Galvanoids alone.
I just think they'll try and eat us.
I thought maybe that's like
I don't.
an extra after the campaign. We head there to eliminate them.
I like that Needham's Grove.
I like
Pretty good
yeah.
idea.
I like the idea of taking the ring we have to Needham's Grove. I think that's priority number 1, isn't it?
I think before that, maybe getting more allies could be.
Well, I think potentially we should make the point that we'll take the ring to Needham's Grove with whatever men the Emperor wants to send with us, if Erend can reach out to Abahan, then when we return, we can organise a truce, a ceasefire, whatever, to get them talking even, and we can be the bridge that connects there, so that they don't have to.
Yeah.
So I think it's Needham's Grove first.
Yeah.
And if the Uniter wants to follow us there, then that's it, we're in.
And then hopefully we can even trap him there, so even if we die, he's stuck there because he can't leave because he's evil.
Cool.
Before we, as we leave for that, if we can get the Emperor to give us an official letter or something agreeing to talk to Abahan about the Uniter, then we can get that delivered while we go to Needham's Grove.
Oh, that's true. We don't even need to get to Needham's Grove and back, right? We need to get to Needham's Grove, drop the ring off, and then you could probably teleport us straight to Abahan. I'd assume you have a teleportation sigil in Abahan anyway.
We're just gonna leave it somewhere around Needham's Grove.
I figure we go into Needham's Grove looking for Shanti.
Oh yeah, she might take it.
You'd hope she'd turn up for a loyal follower of her husband.
Maybe if we'd just given her the book in the first place, none of this would have happened.
I genuinely think the book might actually.
Book might be the
I
ring.
think the book might be the ring.
I think that
I did after you said it, and I've never thought that until you said it.
Yeah, it's
you were
never.
saying a minute ago.
I know we checked. I think Z checked the cover of the book if there was a ring on it ages ago, but
never if it was an actual ring.
The book was definitely magical. Yeah, the book was a magical object. It was able to write in itself. It changed itself. It changed the pages in it. I fucking think the book might have been ring number 5. Potentially. Which would explain it giving Z access to spells as well.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Sam. How dare you?
I was not
I
expecting.
mean, if it is, that's some very good long-term storytelling, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's good.
I've run over one, unfortunately.
Yeah, no worries.
But that was a great session. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was really good fun.
Catch you guys next week.
See you later, Charlie.
See you later.
I was not expecting to take part